Our society has countless images, ideas, and stereotypes about people of color, and yet none of them tell the full tale. Whether influencing fashion, business, art, entertainment, science, politics, or law, people of color have and continue to positively impact American society on so many levels. And today, we are proud to share their stories in their own words. This is Our Voices on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Welcome to Our Voices, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation. My name is Natasha Nurse. I'm the owner and co-founder of Dressing Room 8, co-host of Woke and Free, and the lifestyle editor of Plus Model magazine. And this show is focused on highlighting the amazing work of powerful change agents who have a great message to share with the world. And today, I'm really happy and excited to have a guest that we've already had on the show, Professor Heather Schultz. And today, she's talking about something that's very serious and definitely looking forward to this conversation. We're going to be talking about unwed mothers in Korea. But before we get there, just for everyone to be up to speed, who is Heather Schultz, Professor Heather Schultz? She, as a former journalist, has covered a wide array of beats, including bridal technology, criminal justice, reproductive health, pop culture, direct marketing, legal technology, digital marketing, and interior design. Her articles have been published in the New York Times, NBCnews.com, New York Daily News, and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. With a passion for social change and technology, Heather has transitioned into nonprofit communications and content marketing. Her keen interest in the intersection of communication and media relations has led to her adjunct professor positions at two prominent academic institutions in New York City. Heather currently teaches persuasion and public opinion at Fordham University and speech communications at Baruch College. And of course, in her spare time, she's working on a memoir about her journey for unconditional self-love and acceptance from the lens of a Korean adoptee. She's a Long Island native and also a domestic violence survivor. So without further ado, Heather, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on your show again, Natasha. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you're back home at Our Voices. So first and foremost, again, to get everyone up to speed, tell us a little bit about what's going on with unwed mothers in Korea.
Sure. So there are many unwed mothers in South Korea, and they are basically invisible. Mm-hmm. South Korea is a very socially conservative society, and for a Korean woman who is not married, it's shunned and they are removed from their family. And government statistics show that there are approximately 25,000 single mothers in South Korea. This figure is questioned by the Korean Unwed Mothers Families Association and the Korean Unwed Mothers Support Network, according to a March 1st, 2018 article in Al Jazeera that was actually written by one of my Korean adoptee friends, Ann Babe. Shout out to Ann Babe for bringing this important issue to light. And they believe that that figure is not accurate because they think that there are many single unwed mothers who did not register due to fear of discrimination.
Okay, wow. And so, yeah, when I was kind of going around on the internet, and I saw an article by Elise Hu in NPR from 2015, and she states more than 90% of children today given up for adoption are born to single moms, and adoptees argue that the primary reason children are given up is because of this social stigma unwed mothers face. Single moms were and are so unwelcome in South Korea that expectant moms without husbands are often forced to hide their pregnancies before being encouraged to give up their kids. So essentially, if this stigma has been happening for a long time, which it seems like it has been, what do you think are necessary solutions that need to be put in place?
Well, there definitely needs to be more awareness and support organizations. So there are two organizations I mentioned, KUMFA, the Korean Unwed Mothers Families Association, and the Korean Unwed Mothers Support Network. So these are groups that are a community for single mothers to create that family, because their birth families have shunned them because of their decision, and they just feel like a failure and that they're not responsible.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. And are there other discriminatory practices that these unwed mothers are dealing with in South Korea?
So according to their current welfare policy, single mothers can receive a maximum monthly allowance of South Korean won of 180,000, which equals to $167 in the U.S.
Okay.
But that there are very strict restrictions in terms of the age and income, and also the family income.
Okay. And so you feel like that number isn't enough to support the mother who's going to be having the baby?
And the majority of the single unwed mothers are not receiving support from the father.
Oh, wow.
And so family is very huge in South Korea. So especially in terms of holidays, that's where the single unwed mothers feel it the most. So there are these organizations I mentioned that bring this community and have these celebrations for the single unwed mothers who feel discriminated from their families.
Okay. And in the U.S., it seems like now more than ever, we have a lot of movements and kind of community activism taking place in our culture where people are standing up, whether it's for, sexual abuse or violence, or whether it's racially charged. In South Korea, would you say you're seeing any type of movement like that where, these unwed mothers are saying enough is enough, we're women, we deserve respect, and our family planning choices are our family planning choices and no one else should be kind of involved with that?
I don't see huge momentum around that right now, but there is the Me Too movement is very, very present in South Korea.
Oh, okay.
In January, a public prosecutor, I hope I pronounced her name correctly, Seo Jae-hyun, she accused a former South Korean Ministry of Justice official of groping her during a funeral in 2010.
Wow.
And then, so that gave light to other Koreans. If there's public prosecutor, she has the confidence to share her story aloud because that her title is very high in society. Then after that, hundreds of Koreans came and brought their own Me Too stories to light.
Wonderful.
So I definitely feel like it's gaining traction, and then maybe it will translate to momentum in the removing that stigma around unwed mothers.
Absolutely. Do you feel like there's a community amongst those mothers, or are they not only being discriminated against in the culture, but even amongst themselves, they don't kind of come together in solidarity?
There is a community within the single unwed mothers.
Oh, good. Okay, good. And how is social media helping the conversation for this?
With social media, I don't know that much in terms of that, but social media, just like social media has been prevalent in the Me Too movement here in the U.S., it's been a contributing factor in South Korea as well.
Good. Okay, that's good to hear. You are listening to Our Voices on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Natasha Nurse, and my guest today is Professor Heather Schultz. So, Heather, with the conversation of unwed mothers in South Korea being stigmatized and not treated fairly, how would you say, the feminist movement, fourth wave feminism, how is that playing a role with this situation?
Sure. So I don't believe it's really making impact right now.
Okay.
But with feminism taking off in terms of the Me Too movement in South Korea, I think that will spread to justice for single unwed mothers, and more single unwed mothers will start sharing their stories. And there were quite a couple stories that were depicted in the Al Jazeera piece that my friend Ann Babe wrote. And I just think that more of these women need to continue educating and getting their voices heard. And that's the beauty of social media and the digital age that we live in right now.
Absolutely. I mean, do you personally feel like there's enough media coverage around this? Because I feel like I definitely see something about Me Too, if not every week or every other day. But I don't necessarily, outside of you kind of bringing me into this fold of this conversation, I don't necessarily see it out there as maybe it should be. What are your thoughts with that?
I haven't seen that many in my research. I haven't seen that many articles, like a couple articles in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
One of the most recent being the piece that my friend wrote that was published on March 1st of this year. But in terms of South Korea, I feel like there's more coverage around adoption. But there also needs to be more on the stories of the single unwed mothers.
And why do you think we're seeing that deficient kind of coverage in media?
Just in my opinion, I think that America, they love the heartwarming adoption story.
Okay.
And there's definitely some there definitely needs to be more sensitivity how the media portrays adoption. And in terms, I think a lot of these stories are, you have this American family and they saved this child adopted from a different country.
Interesting.
And the child has a beautiful home and should feel lucky, and it's just this happy, but like it's not getting to the core issues of why this is happening. And so adoption is not as prevalent in South Korea as it was back in the 70s and 80s. And when I was adopted, especially in 1984, that was the huge surge. But there are more other countries in South America and China. But I think we need to take a step back and think about why is this happening?
Now, when you say why are people coming, like foreigners coming to adopt, or why are we not focusing on the mothers giving up the baby? What is the why that you're
the social stigma? So why are the single unwed mothers? Why are they relinquishing their children for adoption? Because of that stigma, and they don't want to be shunned from their families.
Interesting. So if there was less stigma, then you feel like they would keep their babies, and then there would be less adoptions. Then is your hypothesis?
Yes.
That's very sad and interesting as well. Do you feel like are there studies being done about, because it's interesting, because when you kind of what you're saying, that people in media like to focus on the adoption story, right? Like, the baby, it's okay, it's all saved. But what happens to the mom after that, right? Especially with distance. If her baby now is in America, that's not like a hop, skip away. It's like, I don't know, how long is it to fly from New York to South Korea?
It took me 18 and a half hours.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of a journey. I mean, that's like a Hobbit trail right there, right? Like that. So, what happens to her when she's given up the baby, and then is, obviously depending upon the adoption, if it's open or closed, determines whether she will have a relationship, right, with the baby. But I mean, do you feel like the government is involved in not also kind of maybe suppressing the conversation, or not necessarily? Or
I think the government has an impact in it, because Korea is as I mentioned, a very socially conservative society. And
interesting. I mean, do you feel like since adoptions are now decreasing, since you're saying since the 70s and 80s, do you see more women now, with Me Too, they're going to share their stories more, but how are they going to get it in media then? What's going to help propel that so that their voices are heard, and that they're like, no, this is happening, this is upsetting? So
my friend Ann Babe, who wrote the piece in Al Jazeera, she's also a Korean adoptee. She's also aware about these issues. So just more research and finding the stories that are being untold.
So is the conversation start there or here, right? Because does it make sense to start the movement where you have adoptees here who maybe have a little bit more access to media than maybe there, or you don't think the location matters?
The location does matter. So yes,
okay.
That's something that I would like to, after doing this research for your show today, I'd like to definitely rally up my Korean adoptee community and reach out to folks in the media.
Okay, that makes total sense. You are listening to Our Voices. My name is Natasha Nurse. More with my guest, Professor Heather Schultz, next on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
90.3 WHPC reminds you that you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent.
There are thousands of teens in foster care who will love you just the same.
There are thousands of siblings in foster care who are waiting for an adopted family.
There are 108,000 children and youth currently waiting in foster care for permanent families.
For more information on how you can adopt, go to adoptuskids.org.
A message from the Ad Council and the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Welcome back to Our Voices on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Natasha Nurse, and my guest today is Professor Heather Schultz. So, Heather, when talking about the situation, what's going on, the stigma against unwed mothers in Korea, I guess what advice do you have for those mothers and dealing with this trauma?